Thank you for tuning in to the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust podcast. My name is Dr. Marcus Bright, and I'm pleased to be joined by a co-conversationalist, Miss Benita Gordon.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Miss Gordon, introduce yourself to the audience. Let them know all about everything that you're engaged in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benita Gordon. I'm originally from Lawrenceville, Virginia, so I'm a country girl. I travel extensively, so I've been up and down the East Coast teaching and working and overseas. I am the CEO and founder of Global Education Concierge. We talk about all things education, so we work with parents, students, educational institutions, community organizations, and we do everything dealing with education. As a country girl would say, from the rooter to the tutor.
Oh, that's great to hear. And thank you for the important work that you are engaged in. We're going to tackle two broad topics in this episode. One is the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And two is the potential ramifications of the closing of the U.S. Department of Education, which has been touted by President-elect Donald Trump and many of his allies.
Yes.
What is your take on the role of the U.S. Department of Education and what would closing the department mean?
So we do know that there's a lot of foolishness in education. And we do understand that everything is not equal. There have been some problems in the Department of Education. There have been some things that we wanted them to do stronger, do better. But we also want to understand that when you dismantle something, you get rid of it completely, and the trickle-down effect is real. One of the things we definitely do not want to happen is Title IX going away. IDEA, where we're working with students who are gifted and students who are special needs, when we're doing proper training for teachers, when we are looking at testing. We don't want to dismantle the Department of Education, but we do want to adjust, let's say clean up some things and put some things back together that are not working properly as we move into the 22nd century.
Yeah, and you mentioned Title IX, also Title I,
yes.
Which was really derived from the Civil Rights Movement as a part of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, Lyndon Johnson, specifically to assist students who come from poverty, and it funds very many crucial supports. What would that mean to either lose that funding or to have that funding, as some have proposed, repurposed into block grants that states can kind of do anything with?
To lose that funding would be detrimental. So we also want to understand that poverty looks different in urban and rural settings. I was a Title I teacher. I'm a proponent of Title I, but I'm also a rural girl. And so in the rural aspect, Title I at times is essential. And even here in our urban cities, Title I is essential to understanding the type of teachers we have, the training, so that our teachers are prepared to go into the classroom, and then our students get extra assistance. So when we're saying we're preparing them for the work field, or we're preparing them to be bosses and run businesses, first they have to read. We have to do that critical thinking. And so we're able to pull that funding in, have the additional hands, have the additional people, so that our groups are smaller, so that the learning is happening. We don't want to overcrowd the classrooms. And so when our students are in poverty, we also know that there's some trauma that's going on, so we're able to get counselors in, therapists, food. Food insecurity is huge. All of that is built into that Title I grant, into that Title I funding that schools are provided. So that is the first thing. We do not want it to go away. We need it to stay. And so that's part of when we say dismantling, that trickle down, that goes all the way to early childhood. And we know early childhood education is essential. That foundation that needs to be set up in reading and just the phonics that's going to carry them through. So we do not want to dismantle the Department of Education. And then we always want to look at who's dismantling what. We have to be leery of people who are dismantling and for what reasons. And that is the concern we have.
I'm glad that you broke down the tangible day-to-day implications of closing the Department of Education, because sometimes things are said as political slogans,
yes,
and not necessarily translated to the people that it impacts until it actually impacts them.
Yes.
What would a preview be of the removal of those kind of resources for the listening audience in Miami-Dade County and in any other people across the country who may be in rural, urban, or suburban communities?
So the best way I could get them to kind of figure it out is when we closed down the school buildings for COVID. When we had difficulties getting students food. There was food insecurity in a major way. There was difficulty with trauma. So we weren't able to get to our students and give them that personal touch. When we weren't able to really teach, some of our students still need FaceTime. They still need to be beside me. I still need to point to them. We still need to use tangible things to learn. So when we start taking away funding, those little things start going away. And that's our basic building block. So that's the best way I can say, COVID was different when we closed down that school building, and the effect of that we are feeling now. We can overcome it, but it's something that we are feeling, and it's something that we need to make sure that we continue to stay away from that. We want to build up our students. We want to set the next generation up. We want them to have businesses and to work in our community. I want you to go away to college. I want you to become an electrician right here. And so we have to build them up. When we take away funding from our schools, any type of schools, any type of students, that impacts the whole community, which impacts the entire U.S.
It's a great point. And you also mentioned early childhood education.
Yes.
And it's so vital. One of our policy aims is to lead a movement or be a part of a movement that brings about universal pre-K full day for all 3 and 4-year-olds in the state of Florida. What is your take on the childcare crisis that we have, and what are some strategies, both from a policy standpoint and from a programmatic standpoint, that can move us to a better place?
So the first 2 things I'm always going to speak about is pay people their money.
Yeah.
And the second thing I'm always going to speak about is location. So a lot of times we have able-bodied, trained men and women who can open daycares, who can open learning centers, but is finding a location that is affordable so that we're not charging our parents these astronomical prices, but we're also able to pay the guides and the teachers in the classes so that our turnover is low. We already know it doesn't matter whether it's pre-K, 3 or 4, all the way up to college, turnover is essential. And we want to keep that consistency. So I would always say, let's try and make sure that we help people find the real estate. Help them with the grants to set it up, because people don't realize that it takes money to set up the daycare, to set up the school. Give them the grants, give them the resources, set it up. The training, the certifications, all of that is money. So if that upfront cost is something that we can help with, then we can get down into the nitty gritty, and we're able to have access and affordable educational childcare, and to set our students up for success. I was a middle school teacher for a long time, and it took me some classes to refresh how important early childhood is.
Yeah.
So when they get to us in middle school, they are so prepared. They don't lose their imagination. They are able to use technology and be creative. And that's important.
As we speak of imagination, and as we transition to Dr. Martin Luther King, before he articulated his dream, he said that we have come to Washington, D.C. 100 years after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation to dramatize a shameful condition. And it is really shameful that we are letting the next generation down in terms of not addressing their needs before they get to kindergarten in a systematic and a broad way. How can we dramatize this issue as we try to build this movement and let people understand that the status quo is unacceptable, but that we must have action, and we must have action now?
So I think one of the things is we know, I think what it is that how can they become active? And I think community organizations reaching out, and of course we know now we have to reach out on everything. Podcasts, the newspaper, social media, and using it for good. We have to be able to say, these are the organizations, these are the activities, this is the community center. We have these things available. A lot of times it's a lack of knowledge and they don't have access. So once we make things accessible in a mode of ways, then we're able to say, okay, we can handle this. We have your children, we have this, we have the money, we have the funding, we have the people. And it's always important to volunteer. At times, the money is not the issue, it's the bodies in place. And so we need people to come out and read. We need people at the library volunteering. We need people at the literacy lab. We need people coming into the universities, helping people get their GEDs. And so all of those things are saying, okay, here's the access. I am giving you the knowledge where it is, so let's come on. And so it's going to take the entire community. I feel like it's going to have to be like back in the 70s. Churches are going to have to be involved.
Yeah.
The synagogue, wherever we have a congregation of people, we need to be giving them the information.
Absolutely. Everyone can play a role.
Everyone has to play a role.
Now, a lot of your work is based in Memphis, Tennessee.
It is.
I spent a lot of my childhood in Memphis, and Memphis is also the site where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated April 4th, 1968 on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. What are your reflections on the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
Education is a civil rights issue. Education is a civil rights issue. And we are moving backwards at times, and it's not in a good way. So at times we need to pause and we need to look. I told someone at a conference the other day, we were speaking about ed tech. And he said, what can we do in ed tech with the 21st century? I said, nothing. We need to be looking at the 22nd century. That's how fast it's moving. And so when I see school districts, when I see school systems saying, okay, we're going to train our teachers in a gamut of things, social emotional learning, how to teach reading, but also how to incorporate technology, that's when I see that we're seeing is equitable across the board, which goes back to civil rights. We have to have the funding, and we know the funding is not always going to put everybody on the equal playing field, but when we have the funding, we can start leveling the field. And so when we reflect back, we want to make sure that we're doing that part of education. We want to make sure that we are accepting to all students. All students, all means all. So when we have inequalities, I have students that are coming in and English is their second or third language. When I have deaf students coming in, I need ASL training. So we want to make sure that we are incorporating all of our students into our classrooms and making it a safe environment. And I think all of that encompasses what Dr. King was speaking into existence and what he was moving us into.
When you look at Dr. King's career in civil rights, which really began in earnest in 1955, Rosa Parks refuses to surrender her seat. Dr. King is elected as the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association. He becomes one of the leaders of the Montgomery bus boycott. And a lot of his early civil rights career was about social inclusion, not having folk not having to sit in the back of buses and being socially included in terms of having access to public accommodations and hotels and restrooms and movie theaters. And you have the Freedom Rides in 61. You have the Albany Movement, 61, 62, Birmingham, March on Washington, Lease in 1964. Civil Rights Act, social inclusion, and then he moves to political inclusion in terms of the Selma movement. For almost 100 years, blacks have been barred in many places from voting due to literacy tests and how many bubbles are in a bar of soap. The movement on Selma, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, pushing Lyndon Johnson to introduce the Voting Rights Act, and then having signed in 1965, and then the latter part of his career was about economic exclusion. Even in the March on Washington, he said that blacks are living in a lonely island of poverty amidst a vast ocean of material prosperity. And he goes and protests the economic conditions in Chicago and other cities in the North, and they start Operation Breadbasket with selective buying campaigns to try to open up the workplace, open up jobs, open up contracts, open up advertisement. And even in Memphis, he's there protesting and advocating on behalf of garbage workers.
Yes, sir.
And leading into a poor people's campaign that he wanted to culminate with another mass encampment in Washington, D.C. This economic opportunity, the economic justice issue, how does it tie into education, and how can we continue this economic dream?
So one of the things that I've learned is that students want to know about money,
Yeah.
but we're not teaching them. And so let's start teaching. So we can start teaching the babies. So first of all, in order to understand economic justice, let's understand what my money is doing. Where is my money going? Why can't I just swipe? Because that's what they see us doing now. They see a lot of swiping, and we understand that. But where is the money? What bank has it? What credit union has it? How did the money get there? So we need to literally, every school district should not be graduating students unless they are taking a financial literacy class. The kids want to know. They want to know how to use Robinhood on their phone to invest. They want to know, why does Uncle Sam take all of this money out of my check? And then I have $5 left. They're like, where is this going? And so we want to make sure that understanding that part leads to the next step. We're missing that part. And so they're not connecting it to economic injustice or justice because they don't understand the economic side. So we have to make that universal. Mm-hmm. We have to say we can't graduate a student, and I don't care whether you're homeschooling, micro school, unschooling, a charter school, a public school, until we have basic foundation of the money, what to do with your money, budgeting, college, FAFSA forms. Do you need to take all of that money? You don't need all of that money for that loan for school. Take out exactly what you need. And so when we are able to do that, then we're able to move the students over here, because then they will see the injustices, and then they know where to fight. Then they know what to do. It's amazing. We did an activity with the students, and we just gave them random jobs. And I said, this is your job. This is how much you make a year. You have to stay here in Memphis. You have to find an apartment, a car, all of the things, and this is how you have to break it down. And it took us 2 weeks. And when I say frustrated children, because they were like, I can't live. Like, a couple of my kids, like, I have to move back here with my parents. And I was like, okay. Or I even had one young man say, my granddaddy gifted me the car, so I don't have a car payment. And they started getting creative on how to keep the money in the bank and in their pocket. And it reminded me of a show I grew up watching. They did the same thing with their son. And in that scenario, students really were understanding what their parents were going through and what it means to be under the poverty line, what is middle class, and what is rich. Because you just need to do a simple act and show them the money. Now that we've shown them the money, they were able to see that, and they're like, oh, this is not fair. And then we have another discussion. Now we have some activists in the room, and that's where we can go with that.
Great points in terms of preparing students to be good stewards of the money they have. How can we prepare students to make more money, to have the industry recognized credentials, to have the skill sets and competencies to make them competitive in this new economy? What can school systems, what can we as community members do to better prepare students to be economically viable? One
of the things we need to do is listen to the clients. We need to listen to our students. All of our students do not want to go to a four-year university. I have students who want to go into owning their own funeral home. And I go, oh, okay, let's figure out what you need to do. So first we want to listen to the clients. Then we want to say, how can you do this job as an entrepreneur? But what does that look like? You want to drive trucks? That's an entrepreneur. But what does that look like? How do you set up a LLC? How do you purchase your truck? So literally walking them through the steps and allowing them to take a class in entrepreneurship. You're already cutting the basketball player's hair. You're already an entrepreneur. I had a young lady who was already braiding the girls in the neighborhood hair. I said, you're not charging enough. So once we listen to our clients, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a dentist, great. So this is your path. But can you do a YouTube channel and teach people how to pass the test? And now you're getting some extra income? Or can you start a business and tutor at the school, in the library, for students that are not passing the test? So we want to give them the straight and narrow, but what part can you venture off to increase your money? And so that's what we want to do. And a lot of times they'll tell you, I want to be an anthropologist. And I was like, an anthropologist? Okay, we can do that. This is the 4-year college. This is where we're going to go. This is what we need to do. Now, what else can you do with that? You have a love of this. How can we incorporate that so that we can have some money that you can use to invest, to save for retirement, to save to go on trips? So we always want to look at, in the education system, we want to offer entrepreneurship. We want to listen to our clientele. Why don't we have a trucking class? Why don't we have, and we have a lot of classes where cosmetology, and that's great. But why don't we have a class on students learning how to be electricians or HVAC? We're here in Miami and Memphis. Let that AC go out. Yeah, I'm going to charge you $200 to come look at it. And that's entrepreneurship. And now you have a skill and a trade. And so we have to listen to the kids. The kids know.
You know, one of our policy aims is to either incentivize or require students to graduate high school with both an academic diploma and an industry recognized credential. Yes. What do you think are some of the major barriers to making that happen, and how can we overcome them?
We have to tell the system to let go. We're in this traditionalistic system of you can't do this, or we've always done it this way. And I'm going to continue to say we're moving into the 22nd century. The type of kids, the type of school I was in the early 1900s, or the kids tell me in the 1900s, these students don't need that. They don't want that. They want answers. How can I implement it? So one of the things we need to do is to make sure that we release our grip and listen and learn from them. The group of students that are coming through now, they have to be a why to what we're doing. Once we understand that, there's buy-in from everyone, and we're able to move ourselves forward and move our students forward into adulthood and into the community. But if we're not listening and we're holding on to our traditions, and we think, oh, this worked in 1988, it did. What? It's 2025.
Yeah.
So let's relax the grip, release the traditions, and look at what's new, and then think forward. We have to be thinking forward. We have to be predicting what we think is going to happen. Thinking
forward, listening to students. How do we also listen to industry?
Definitely.
And co-create programming that is relevant and can answer the students why?
So I think organizations, MDOT. I think organizations like when we have homeschooling parents coming together. I think when we have a charter school alliance. I think when we have the school board meetings, when we pull people in and say, what does your industry need? And they have to be honest with us. We have to have some honest conversations. I am getting people to come into my jobs and they are not ready because. And then the schools have to not be upset and not be offended. And we have to go back into our system and change the following things. It has to be that simple. Come to the table, have a conversation. What do you need? What is your business forecasting? How many people will you need in your company? Is your company moving all to electronic? Do you need more students who understand AI? Do you need more students who understand how to use this or that? When they tell us, then we're able to go back into the system. We're able to adjust and change some things, and we're able to move forward. And I know some people may say, oh, that means school is just creating workers. No, that means school is creating people who are going to run our community. That means schools are creating people who are going to contribute to the community so that our community is a success. And within that, we're going to have our entrepreneurs. We're going to have other people who are going to break off and start their other businesses. But we want to make sure that our students have jobs. That's what we want to make sure. We want everyone to be gainfully employed and have a living wage. That's what we want.
That is imperative. And you mentioned the coming together of different people and different organizations. Dr. King and his work was certainly an example of that. He was the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, but they came together with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and the Congress of Racial Equality Corps, and the NAACP, and the Urban League, and the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. They all came together to facilitate things like the March on Washington. they had their differences, but
Yes.
ultimately they came together and pushed forward towards a common aim.
Yes.
What's our pathway forward here to come together and move and advance towards some common aims?
I think all means all, and we have to keep the kids at the forefront. Like,
Yes.
I'm an auntie. I have 4 amazing nieces and nephews. I am at everything. I'm my brother and my sister, like, your name is on the list, just go. The community has to come and be involved. Okay, your kids are grown and gone. You're still in this community. Come to the table. You own a business downtown. You need workers during the summer. Come to the table. So when we all come together, we can move the needle and we can say, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And we will see the students buy in. We will see the community assisting everyone. And that is how we grow and that is how we progress. We come to the table and like you said, we're not always going to see eye to eye, but if we keep, what's the focus? Ensuring that our students are educated, ensuring that it's equitable, ensuring that we are seeing how can we move them forward, ensuring that they come back to the community. The community thrives because young people, we know that. So yes, I want you to go away to school. I want you to go away and get a good job, but I need a certain percentage to come back to the community. And that's what we're looking at. Like, how do we bring you back into the community because we listen to you? We are finding ways to make it accessible to you. We're finding it. What do you need? We're learning now young people don't like to drive. So now we're having to build these communities where everything is, I can get on a scooter, I can bike it, I can walk it. That is listening to your clientele. And so that's what we're going to have to do. Come to the table, listen to our clientele, be ready to change and adjust and not be offended. And then we can move forward.
What do you think are the top 2-3 policy issues that we should focus on leading into 2025 and beyond?
We are going to need to focus on policy number 1 is paying educators.
Yeah.
I work with transitioning teachers on a daily basis, and when I say they are leaving still in droves because they cannot provide for their family a living wage. They have master's degrees, doctorates, and we are not paying them for all of the things that they do. That's going to be the first policy.
We can pay them, or we can pay the cost on the back end.
And that's what we're doing.
And we are all paying for the lack of investment.
Yes.
In the teaching workforce.
Yes.
You can't withdraw what you didn't invest.
There it is. 100%. And I love that you said that. The next policy I would say is to go back to that early childhood. We need to have, like you said, I love universal full day, but we need to make sure that it's appropriate for the age. We don't want to see 2 and 3-year-olds in desk all day. You learn through play. So we want to make sure that we have an appropriate curriculum for our early childhood learners and for their guides and teachers. So we're going to paying the educators, early childhood universal and full day. And that means across all the states and territories. And then I think the third thing would be we need to make college accessible financially. And that is whether it's community college, whether it is a trade college. We have students who have the skill set and don't have the financial backing. Mm-hmm. And that is why we have doctors and nurses shortage. We're going to have shortages of a whole bunch of other things. And yes, there are fields that we need that they do not need a 4-year degree. But like I tell my students, I want to look up on my dentist wall and see that he or she has gone through dental school before you come over here to help me. And that is essential.
You've given us some great marching orders. Invest in our educators. Early learning for all. Higher education access and affordability.
Yes.
Let's keep the dream alive, Miami-Dade County, South Florida, the United States of America. Let's tap into the new dream.
The new dream.
We appreciate history, but it's time for us to make history. Keep the dream alive in our time. thank you so much for joining us on the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust podcast. Ms. Benita Gordon.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.